Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the YTL Foundation online dialogue on mental health and well-being in education. It was just over a year ago that we had our first online dialogue. And of course, that was in response to the pandemic when we couldn't have our usual in-person dialogues. And truly, we did not expect that a year later, we will still be conducting our dialogue series online. We had fully expected, I think, as with many of us, that the worst would be over and that, we could have a hybrid event. And so at least some of us can meet face to face. However, and notwithstanding the stress that we all feel about being online all the time, there are some benefits in being online. And we are thrilled this year to welcome our panelists from the UK and the US. It is a really unsociable time in the Pacific Coast. So a very big thank you to Sachin Chowdhury, who will be speaking in the second session. And just a year ago, I remember how worried we were about the learning loss that students across the world would experience as a result of being unable to attend school during the pandemic. Now, a year later, we know that what has happened, especially to the students who are disadvantaged, challenged, or disabled. The digital divide has deepened inequities that previously existed. Many organizations are now working on finding strategies to address the learning loss. From programs that we ourselves are running at YTL Foundation to provide digital learning resources and devices, as well as online classes under our newly founded LEAPS Academy. And also the recent Cikgu Kickstart Awards run by Education, Teach for Malaysia, and Pemimpin GSL, trying to find solutions born from teachers themselves as to how to mitigate the learning loss experienced by their students. But what is becoming painfully obvious is that the pandemic and being away from school, locked at home, is having a profound impact on the mental health and well-being of students. On the extreme end, there have very, very sadly been suicides and self-harm. But what is often not reported, I think especially in this country, is the deterioration in the mental health and well-being of the children. It may just be that there are more days when children feel sad and angry as opposed to happy and calm, or being fearful instead of motivated to go to school. So today's dialogue will discuss this topic and what steps we can take to help our children remain mentally well and strong. We start with a panel of experts from the University of Birmingham, followed by an introduction to a research-backed AI-driven social emotional learning technology platform that has been used in schools in the US and India to monitor mental health among students. And finally, we have a panel of our local practitioners and educators looking at the Malaysian context. At the end of this dialogue, we will have a Q&A session. So if you have questions for the speakers, please post your questions on the chat and we will pick them up so that your questions will be posed to the speakers. Sadly, Sachin will not be able to stay for this session due to this hugely unsociable timing. So just let's get right into the dialogue with our first panel. We'll be discussing managing in a pandemic. What counts as success? We're very pleased to have with us our panelists for this session who are joining us from Edinburgh, London, and Manchester. I'm especially pleased to welcome back Professor Julie Allen, who was with us last year as well. So if I can introduce them, first we have Professor Julie Allen, Professor of Equity and Inclusion and former head of the School of Education at the University of Birmingham. Her research focuses on inclusive education, disability studies, and children's rights. And she has been advisor to the Scottish Parliament, the Welsh Assembly, the Dutch and Queensland governments, and the Council of Europe. Julie, very good morning to you, and thank you for joining us again.
Thank you. Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be part of this very, very important dialogue, as you underlined in your opening remarks. It's crucial that we have this discussion, so I'm delighted to be here.
Thank you, Julie. And next we have Dr. Francesca Peruzzo, who is a postdoctoral research fellow at the School of Education at the University of Birmingham as well. She's currently researching inclusive technologies, digital accessibilities, and pedagogical networks in the global north and the global south during the COVID-19 pandemic, collaborating with disabled student activists in England for a socially just higher education and grassroots organizations for a more inclusive education system. Welcome, Dr. Francesca.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me here. It's a great pleasure to be able to take part of this very important discussion.
Thank you. And then finally, we have Bethan Morris-Tran, who is a doctoral student at the University of Birmingham. Her research interests focus on educational practices of the global south, particularly Vietnam, education and social class, international rankings, and testing on educational agendas. Her doctoral research involves exploring the pandemic responses of different countries and how this has influenced their educational responses and the mental well-being of teachers and students. Bethan, welcome from Manchester.
Hi, thank you. And thank you so much for having me. It's really exciting, as Julie and Francesca have said, to be part of this dialogue. So yeah, very exciting.
So let's jump straight into this really important topic. I mean, firstly, if I can just put a question to all of you, and it's a general question, but I think you will all have experienced in different ways. What would you say are the current concerns on education, inequality, and mental health from the pandemic? And, kind of in parallel to that, what were the concerns before? So maybe I can just get Julie to kickstart this.
I'd be delighted to. I think the concerns are many and great. Save the Children has described a toxic mix of poverty and discrimination that results in individuals being excluded, whether they're a refugee, of ethnic minority, disabled, or a girl. And this has been exacerbated as a consequence of the COVID-19 pandemic. The pandemic, as you said, that Kathleen, in your introduction, has widened the gap between those already disadvantaged and other students. And it's created what UNICEF has called a double jeopardy. Those already behind are left further behind. And we're seeing stress among students, but also among teachers in the form of real teacher stress, burnout, and poor retention. And in Malaysia, a recent survey of students found that 1 in 5 13 to 17-year-olds were suffering depression, 2 in 5 were suffering anxiety, and 1 in 10 had stress. So we're seeing really quite grave concerns that have only got worse during the pandemic.
And Francesca, maybe we have your views on this.
Absolutely. And I think we need to go back a bit during the pandemic, in particular at the beginning of the pandemic, to grasp what's going on at the moment. I think it's important to remember how the swift change to remote teaching and learning engendered many problems in terms of mental health. Because on the one hand, we had teachers that were overburdened, not only with workload in terms of learning new technologies that they weren't really using during their teaching in school, but also overburdened by being able to be in contact with many students that they couldn't be reached, in particular, for example, in rural areas, students, disabled students that couldn't be put in connection with specialists that they were following the processes of inclusion in schools. Parents, we really need to think about parents, how also parents were dealing perhaps with job loss or with dear ones loss. So the grief of it, and on top of that, being able to help with children's homeschooling. Many parents weren't really trained in the use of technology. So that also had a great impact, not only on parents' mental health, but cascaded on children. And children, well, we knew that obviously they were missing their peers. It's so important, peer contacts, for our growing processes and development processes. So they felt isolation, sometimes in their own houses. They lacked the means to deal with the amount of grief we had to go through, and unable to stay in front of a screen, for example, so to adapt to these new technologies. So, and on top of these, the feeling of uncertainty, of precarity, of insecurity and anxiety for the learning loss that was happening as well.
Yeah, I think, just remarking on that, you're Italian, and it must have been terrible in those early days, as what we heard was happening in Italy. And talking about grief, I think we tend to gloss over the impact of grief on the children and the families at the time. So yeah, thank you very much for pointing that out. And yeah, Bethan.
I think really it's just to echo what Julie and Francesca have said, but I think specifically with all the challenges that people have faced in the pandemic, one of the better things to have come out from it is that there is a willingness for people to be more vulnerable and have those conversations about specifically what they have found difficult and why it's been so challenging for them. One thing I think that's clear with the pandemic is that, as both Julie and Francesca have said, it's kind of exacerbated existing challenges and inequalities to the extreme now, where there are, as you mentioned in your opening speech, wider kind of learning gaps between students that are more disadvantaged and students that have kind of had the social and economic resources to kind of help themselves get through this crisis. And while it's good that there is a bigger focus now and an openness to have discussions about what's not working, I think it's important to remember that a lot of the challenges that we're facing now, like, they're not new things, and it's not that they were already there. They've just kind of got worse. And I think it is a great opportunity really to look at what's not working and why, and to change the system within that. So it's a good opportunity for those honest conversations.
Yeah, and yeah, Julie, you talked about the double jeopardy. So, I mean, could you elaborate on the other issues in our current education systems, I mean, whether it's in the UK or elsewhere, that you're familiar with, that are not conducive to good mental health and well-being?
Certainly. We have an education system throughout the world that insists that everyone does better than everyone else, and that doesn't help us at all. Testing and formal examinations are part of that, and we all know how important a part it plays. But they're not a particularly good way to assess children and young people, and they have a really bad effect on children's mental health. The OECD found that 1 in 2 children, 1 in 2, felt anxious about upcoming tests, even when they were well prepared. And this anxiety affects teachers as well, because they're judged by their students' performance through things like PISA, TIMSS, and so on. It's interesting to note that in Malaysia, the UPSR, the Upper Primary School Achievement Test, has just been scrapped. I think that's a great move. And in deciding on that, teachers told the Senior Education Minister, Dr. Radzin Jidin, that they were stealing time from other parts of the curriculum in order to ensure children were prepared for the test. But it's great that that has gone. We know from another OECD study, the TALIS study on teaching and learning, that schools with high accountability systems create more teacher stress. The higher the school accountability, measured by the presence of examinations, public examinations, the publishing of those data, and the presence of inspections, creates higher student stress, teacher stress. So the system is really bad for the mental health of everyone in it.
Yeah, so Julie, I mean, what would be the alternative? We've kind of in this country grown up with tests, you know, that's our mantra. And, you know, without tests, we wouldn't know how to gauge whether our children were learning. And that's, so you have this tension between parents being happy that, oh, we don't have to test anymore, no more stress. On the other hand, some parents are saying, no, we want them because we don't know otherwise whether our children are learning anything in school. Yeah, can you comment on that?
Well, we have thought that tests were the only thing that we could go on with, but we've managed to do without them during this pandemic. We've relied instead on teacher judgment, and we've learned to trust teacher judgment through continuous assessment. And even in our university, we've switched to a different form of assessment whereby the students have a 48-hour period of examination where they get the questions and they can return the answers within 48 hours. And it's much better. I've just been marking endlessly, but I'm marking really competent scripts which assess the things we want. They assess knowledge and understanding, criticality, analysis, and not what the students could remember on a given day. And that's all that tests do. They're a memory test, and we have learned to do without them, and we can continue, I think.
Yeah, what an opportunity. I think if you know, school and education systems take this opportunity to say, what are these alternatives, and really kind of look at them and say, you know, if they can replace this traditional test. Yeah, I think, I mean, I would be all for it. I mean, I have done well in the system of tests, but it does really create a huge amount of anxiety, as you said. And really, do children need this, especially in primary school? So, I mean, for the UPSR tests to have gone, I think we all agree that that's, on this panel anyway, that must be. And then, Julie, when children return to school after the pandemic, I mean, what would be the ideal thing apart from tests? You know, should it be business as usual? And if not, what do you see should be the new normal? And what should we be aspiring to at this time?
Well, I think we're already coming to the view in this discussion that the old normal was not a good thing. And so business as usual is not something we want to return to. We know that the old normal has been damaging, especially for those already disenfranchised groups. So I think it is a moment, as Bethan has said, for a rethink, a restart. The Global Partnership for Education has already urged us to do that. That's a partnership that takes care of education in developing countries. But I think it's a message to us all to do the kind of hard reset that we might do if our computer was ailing, where we return it to the factory settings and start again by saying, what are the good things that we had before? What are the bad things? And what are the good things that we'll hear more about from Francesca that people have been doing in the pandemic to work differently, to work in a more convivial way? So I think it's a chance to actually sit down with everyone, with all the stakeholders, and start to imagine and dream about a better kind of education.
And Bethan, you're right at the center of this. You're doing your doctoral thesis and research in this subject. And what do you see needs reset, especially in the area of mental health and well-being?
Well, I think to kind of backtrack about that, when we talk, when Julie said talking about reset, we need to know what things were good and what things we want to keep so that we have some basis to build on. I think one of the things that I found when I was doing my master's was that I researched what educational success meant to teachers in Vietnam. And something that I found when I was doing my research there was that the idea of success, while that, was predominantly based on things like, getting the grades, studying in the, good universities, and being academically successful, while that was what people thought of as success, the actual manifestations of that were that, that these really bright students were then leaving and then struggling to find the same success in their work or in their jobs, because there was kind of a misalignment between what was taught at schools and what was most useful and applicable in the employment market and in the job sector. I think especially in countries like Vietnam, where there's a big focus on like rote learning and, the power of the teacher and teacher-centered pedagogies, it is difficult, and it would be a difficult transition to then include more, like learner, pedagogies and things like that. But I think in terms of mental health, I think that's shown that we need to have a bit more flexibility about what it means to be successful, because it's not just about, getting the really good grades on the test or, doing really well in, one piece of work. Success in the pandemic has, encompassed all kinds of things from, being able to support, families and loved ones throughout the pandemic, being able to, take a good look at your own mental health and mental well-being, and seeing what is it that I need to feel most happy and safe. And I think in terms of education, the relationship between education and mental health is very kind of intertwined and linked, in that students that are most mentally well and feel better within themselves and safer, have more motivation to want to learn and focus, and it also helps them have that belief in themselves that they are capable of of great things. And so I think going forward, what's great is that people are feeling more comfortable talking about their own mental well-being and what their own mental well-being needs are, and that people are having that conversation about it. So I think definitely there needs to be more of a focus on mental well-being in the curriculum as well, just so that it's not something that is talked about, but something that becomes something that we take as an accepted part of learning and mental and our kind of like well-being overall, in the same way that we all know that it's best for us that we drink lots of water and that we eat good food and that we do exercise, and that mental well-being will just be another part of that, I think, hopefully in future conversations.
Yeah, it's so intertwined, as you say. If children are not anxious, if they're happy to go to school, if they love being there, then the learning will just happen, and take away that anxiety of this success being measured in one dimension. That is so relevant. And Francesca, tell us what you've been doing. You've been working on how technology can be used to help children recover from the pandemic. And I also know that you're doing a project that somehow involves Malaysia. So,
Yes.
so of course, we're very excited to hear about that. So can you tell us a bit more about your project and what you found with working with Malaysian schools?
Yes, and Kathleen. Yeah, it's a postdoctoral project that I'm conducting at the University of Birmingham, and it's titled Digital in a Time of Coronavirus, which stands for Diversifying Inclusion and Growth, Inspiring Technologies for Accessible Learning. And what I'm researching are inclusive and solidary ways of using both digital and non-digital technologies in schools and community during the pandemic to build on instances of such use to rethink educational practices, to rethink what is success in education. And I'm currently collecting data in 6 different countries, including Malaysia, the US, England, Italy, Chile, and Australia. And I'm currently interviewing teachers, head teachers, special teachers, and also grassroots organizations, leaders, to try both from the global north and the global south to try to capture how they address these inequities that we've been discussing so far, and how a more respectful and convivial design of technologies can actually foster and thrive in inclusive schools and communities. In Malaysia gave me one of these amazing examples and instances of such use of convivial technology and technologies to care for mental health. And it's a school located near Kuala Lumpur, which actually used, obviously I went through their policies, their practices, I interviewed a captain of the school and parents and teachers in the school, and they provide me with amazing instances and ideas on how to foster mental health for inclusion by, for example, caring for teachers and for their mental health by calibrating the workload and by balancing their training. So not build on a deficit model of teacher skills, actually using the skills that were already there to be enhanced through technologies. Providing a school platform for communications. We saw that teachers' WhatsApp was full of texts from parents, from children. So they used this intranet to moderate that for teachers' mental health. They made parents co-teachers, so they valued their views and their support for the learning of children. So they empowered parents in this through the use of technologies. And they draw upon digital and non-digital technologies to enhance children's learning. And this is very important because when our homes become our learning environment, by using things that we use every day for our living practices, by using them in the curriculum, we empower our lives and what we do in our daily lives. And these were many of the projects that they did during the pandemic.
Maybe can you elaborate a little bit on convivial technologies and what you mean by that?
Yes, I decided to use the idea of convivial technologies in particular because, especially during the pandemic, we saw a growing narrative about how technologies can actually eventually save us all. And this narrative was very pushed in particular by international organizations such as the OECD, the World Bank, the Global Partnership for Education, UNESCO. There was a conference a couple of weeks ago, and where organized by the OECD, where were discussed the priorities and how to reimagine schools through technologies in the near future. And for example, Giannini from UNESCO said that technologies are mean for inclusion of all students. The EU recovery plan is investing millions to foster teachers' digital preparedness and digital infrastructures for economy. The OECD push for micro-credentials. For example, the Harvard Graduate School of Education, Reimers, said that it's in private institutions that innovation can happen instead of government that are burdened by bureaucracy. So I thought if we focus on the idea of solidarity through technologies and conviviality, we open up to the public idea of technologies, the caring idea of technologies, instead of focusing on the individual and on the private. And so what I can say is that what the pandemic taught us in terms of conviviality of technologies is that we have to adopt an ecological approach to technologies for mental health, because technologies enter socio-cultural, socio-economic, and political spaces that are used by different students, with different teachers, with different bodies and different minds. And we saw that there wasn't an organic approach to technologies. So the idea is to think of convivial technologies with three specific characteristics. The first one is the need to embed teachers' needs and children's needs and experiences in their design and in their use. Because on the one hand, teachers that are involved in understanding how to use their own pedagogies through technologies, they know how to manipulate technologies, then they can actually address real problems. Whilst for children, and this is very important, they have to be given the creativity to use technology. They have to be able to learn through mistakes, which is something that a high-stake accountability test doesn't really enable. And for example, we can actually see through coding or through the critical use of artificial intelligence, children can actually be empowered by the use of technologies instead of being passive users or recipients of it. The second point is respectful design for local cultures and possibilities, because technologies enter local cultures. They can be imposed on them. They enter curricula as well. And the very last one, because I know that I'm running out of time, is a respectful use and convivial use for organizational management. It's important that technologies foster interdisciplinarity in curricula for teachers, sharing of good practices. We saw during the pandemic so many groups that shared practices, teaching practices. So in this sense, we can say that technologies are convivial and that maybe can save us by thinking of them as tools that we can use in a convivial way.
Yes. So does that conclude that is digital salvation a myth, or it's the truth?
Yeah, as I just said, I think we need to be careful. Technologies won't save us. This is a narrative that has been said for such long time. The only way in which we can save technologies is by being able to use them, by being aware of how to use them. Because mental health is actually fostered when we feel that we are in power of something, when we are in power of how to use a laptop. So it has to be designed according to what are our life's experiences. We need to feel the need of using it, because it enters problems, it enters ways of living. In that sense, we can actually talk about the scientific role of technologies. And we have to remember that local communities and governments play a key role in ensuring accessibility, in ensuring conviviality and democratic and respectful design of technologies. In that sense, we can build on community of practices that grants mental health for the whole community. And indeed, the private sector can actually support local governments with their flexible and co-designed technologies and ensuring data protection, which was another big problem during the pandemic. And it's just in this way that mental health of children can actually be enhanced and protected through technologies, respecting the environment, the common good, and the development of critical processes of learning.
Well, thank you very much, Francesca. I think, yeah, it's just that we need to take a critical look at technology, and instead of technology driving what we do, that, you know, make technology caring to empower us so that we feel on top of the technology and not intimidated and anxious about it. Yeah, that is, as it, yeah, we all have to go back to school again to rethink this. And then finally, I think we are kind of maybe running almost to the end of our session. So I just want to throw another open question to all of you. You know, we're talking about how can we come out better. So how do we start this process of recovery? And I think, you know, we've really talked a bit about a new normal being necessary, and especially from a mental health perspective. And so how are we going to get there? Anyone wants to start?
I can kick off with that. So I'll follow up from what I was saying. I think it's the recovery starts from ourselves embedded in communities. And this is so important. It starts from trust, the trust that, for example, Professor Julie Allen was talking about before, in teachers, the trust in our families, the trust in our government, and trust in our ways of using technologies. So I would really say that the recovery starts with care for schools and communities, and starting from there, from personal experiences, then inform curricula, way of assessing and pedagogies.
I would also add that this is an excellent start to the process by signalling the importance of this discussion on mental health and well-being. And I think we can legitimately sit down with people and say, how do we do this restart in relation to examinations, the curriculum, inclusive pedagogies, and how we take care of the well-being and good mental health of everyone in the education system. So I think we are making a wonderful start today to this.
I guess, I think, yeah, just to kind of jump onto what Julie and Francesca have said, I think recovery involves, like they've said, just talking to, you know, people and seeing what it is that, you know, they need and what it is that maybe they wish they had during the pandemic to have made their journey through that easier for them. I think in any recovery, obviously there are growing pains with things, in that you know, any change, you know, can be difficult, but you know, that is, you know, good because it, you know, shows, you know, growth and progress. I think it's important to kind of not put too much, like Julie was saying, about things like burnout and things like that for teachers and students, and not to put all the onus of change on teachers and students to do that, because obviously so much of the challenges that we faced in the pandemic are, you know, obviously, you know, societal problems as well. They're not unfortunately neatly tied up in schools, where it is just a case of, I don't know, fixing schools and then the problems will fix themselves. There, you know, there are obviously wider themes at play, but I think taking an approach where we can be just appreciative of the wider concerns and just And I think looking at those alongside the challenges that have been faced by teachers and students and in schools would help us have an environment that's more conducive to really solving problems by kind of seeing it where the roots are with them, so we can actually get a long-term solution. So
thank you very much. I think, yeah, we've come to the end of our session, and it was really, I think, an insightful conversation where we have ideas, that we need to reset, rethinking of tests, kind of making technology caring. I love that idea, and building community, and just looking at, what we wish we could have done better during the pandemic, and just listening to all parties, and not just teachers and students, but involving society. So thank you so much to Moon, Francesca, and Bethan for all the insights. And we just look forward to working together to build better when we come back after the pandemic. So thank you so much. And next, we will have Sachin Chowdhury, founder of Trust Circles. And now I hand the session over to Lingya to introduce Sachin.
Thank you, Dr. Kathleen, for the handover. I'm Lingya, and here with me today is Sachin Chowdhury, who will be sharing about Trust Circle, tracking the social emotional well-being of students. Now, Sachin is an Ashoka Fellow and a global thought leader in the field of frontier tech, mental health, and well-being, who has been featured on BBC World News, World Mental Health Day, the World Economic Forum, Forbes, Economic Times, and more. After 17 years in the corporate world, Sachin founded a well-being movement via Trust Circle, which focuses on social-emotional learning, prevention, and early intervention. Today, Sachin will be sharing his personal journey with mental health, how he ended up founding Trust Circle, the key components within Trust Circle, and we'll be sharing some of those features with you live, and also some practical takeaways that everyone can use, whether you're a counselor, teacher, or parent. Now, Sachin, I would love to have you join me on stage. Thank you for joining us despite the unsociable hour on your end. How's it going there?
Thank you so much. Oh, it's going well. Thank you. It's almost like 1:45. So hopefully I'm alive and giving you all the right information. But thank you. It's an honor and pleasure to be here.
Thank you. We'll keep it short and snappy for you, Sachin. So I thought we could kickstart.
No. I'm all prepped up and excited. Thank you.
I thought we could kickstart the session by going a little bit personal and going all the way back to the year 1994, which I understand is a very important time for you and your family. Can you share with us what happened then?
Yes. So I'll take the audience back in time. The year was 1994. My younger brother, who is 6 years younger to me, still alive. He was bright and bubbly. One fine day when he went to school, he had an emotional breakdown, and we just got a call from school, teachers, principal, asking us to rush. That was a shock for us. The entire family was not sure how to uncover this, complicated problem, because we had no clue what went wrong. He was the brightest of the students in the school, and at that moment when we saw him crying, we had no clue what's going on. The only thing we were able to do was take him to a primary care physician, then ended up in a psychologist's office, and in a matter of a month we were in a psychiatrist's office. And in the first meeting itself, my brother was diagnosed with mental health issue. And you can imagine the year was 1994, it was pre-internet, and as a family we were torn apart. As an individual, I was slipping in that black hole as well. So what happened with my family should never happen with anyone else became the core of what I believe is Trust Circle's root or mission. So fast forwarding 2 years, 1996 is when I completely was down and under. I decided to take a walking pilgrimage to one of the holy places in northern parts of India, 14 kilometers uphill hike. 70% into my journey, I realized that I have a yogi who's walking along with me. That yogi looked into my eye. I cried, I shared my pain, and what he told me was so profound that really literally changed the purpose and the direction of my life. He said, Sachin, if you really want to find purpose of your life, go back to your pain and you're already there. That was the moment I realized that my brother probably is a lucky individual. He's not a victim. He's surrounded by those who care for him, who believe in him, who want him to get better. There are a million others who are not even in his shoes. And why me? Why my family? Why my brother? All those questions faded away. What came instead is, why were we not able to identify early signs of risk? What was going on within him that he was not able to share? Why were teachers and his friends who were as close to him as we were, they also missed those early signs of risk? So big questions started appearing in front of me. I realized that prevention was completely missing. Early intervention was absolutely missing, because we had no clue. If we would have picked up early signs of risk, we would have had a very, very different approach to solving this problem. So in a nutshell, if we can identify early signs of risk for these individuals who are going through a lot of forces, and these forces may be from personal life, academic life, social life, if we identify the environmental factors that are pushing these kids or individuals over the edge, we certainly can have a fair chance to blossom this individual, which was completely missing in case of my brother. So, and hence, this is what we are all doing with Trust Circle.
So you identified prevention and intervention as two key components that were missing. How did you take this
Yes.
two and this to actually find a solution for it? What was that process like for you?
Yeah. So as I was digging through from 96 to, another, a decade or so, I hunted every nook and corner in India, tried to talk to doctors, tried to talk to the collaboration centers like WHO collaborating centers for mental health, or Schizophrenia Research Foundation, or the leading hospitals. What I had realized was that the world is focused on sick care and not health care. In physical illness, it's very, very clear. You get, fever, or you get some illness or symptoms show up, right? And you realize that you have to go see a doctor. In case of mental health, symptoms don't show up, you just snap. And brain is that part of your body, or that organ of your body, that doesn't give you signs of pain. Even heart gives you signs of pain and you act. Brain does not. So you have to be very, very careful to understand your emotional well-being patterns, trends. Just like we measure our weight, body mass index, and all that stuff, which are physical vitals, mental vitals are equally important. And in the entire journey of mine, I realized that not only mental health care is the most underserved, most ignored area of health, but it also is stigmatized and clouded by shame. That's why people don't step forward even when they realize it. So there has to be fundamental change in the ecosystem. And I also realized that my brother was going through this pain, or this, emotional turbulence within him at very, very early stages in life, which is like when he was 10, 11, probably. Right? So manifestation of mental health issues start early, which is in elementary or middle schools, and people don't realize it. And that's why parents are surprised and are caught off guard most of the time. So the roots are in the education system. So we have to change the way our kids are being educated. And that's why Trust Circle's mission became to integrate social emotional learning into the education system. And that's exactly what Trust Circle does. So identifying these patterns, big gaps, became very, very vivid and clear for me, that there is no prevention, no participation, no prediction. These are the 3 Ps. And if you can bring those 3 Ps into the ecosystem, or a system, or a technology solution, and with new frontier technologies like artificial intelligence, you can actually identify those roots of risk. For example, whether this individual is at risk. If yes, which forces are pushing this individual over the edge? And that's exactly, I can show how Trust Circle does. And you can see how easy it is to identify which age, which gender, which demographics, who is at risk and why we need to change the environmental, patterns or programs that will allow and blossom these individuals.
So just before we jump into letting you show us Trust Circle, I wanted to pick up on something you mentioned, which is social emotional learning. What do you actually mean by that?
Sure. Great question, Ling. We all have grown up with a very standard education curriculum system, right? Whether it's India or China or North America or Europe, we know that maths is important. We know science is important. We know English is important, and now coding is important, right? But nobody ever thinks that without health or without mental health, there is no quality education, or in fact, there is no health. So, mental health actually is the foundation of everything. If you want to have brighter, healthier, prosperous kids or youth or our future, you have to focus on their emotional well being while they are in schools. Pretty simple if you really look at it. However, there is no time spent in the educational curriculum on self reflection. So, what social emotional learning means is that you introduced at least 2 to 3 minutes of quiet time before a class begins, or introduce tools and processes to your kids, to your students, who can empower themselves with data so that they can self reflect and understand their emotions better. Most of the technologies, or in fact, all of the technologies that we have all around us, are taking us away from us, right? You take any social platform, you take any technology, you're basically stepping into somebody else's world very, very easily. However, if you give a trusted space to individual where they can self-reflect, journal, understand their emotions, talk about what they're feeling, thought, feelings, and behaviors, it becomes pretty simple to connect with yourself much better. It's like writing a diary in those golden old days, but now nobody does that. So Trust Circle is introducing these social emotional learning tools into the education system, asking teachers to start their class with just 2 minutes of quiet time. Nobody says a word. Everybody pulls out their devices, personal or school issued devices, and everybody in those 2 minutes tracks their emotions. How sad are they feeling today? How joyful are they feeling today? How angry or how fearful? Just by
So
doing that, it's a game changer.
So you said pulling out the device. Could you pull out Trust Circle for us so that we can see what the students see when you're doing those 3 minutes of quiet time?
Absolutely. I can do that. Thank you so much. Can the audience see my screen?
I think we
Link,
can.
can you see my screen? Okay,
Yes, I can.
perfect. Okay, so Trust Circle is a platform that is device agnostic, that is platform agnostic, software, hardware. It works on all devices, whether mobile, Android, iPhone, Windows. And what the students are doing on daily basis when the class begins is teachers ask them to track their emotions. So they're basically picking this up, and they will not be able to step to the next emotional track unless they think through and write how they are feeling. It's very simple process. It is, emotions are never in silos. Something happens in your environment that triggers your emotion, which leads to a reaction. So it's a simple sequential process. So what we're doing with this 2 minutes of self-reflection time, students are tracking their emotions in those 2 minutes: joyful, sad, anger, fear. And just by doing that, what is happening is, on the administrator's side, the administrators are getting overall emotional trends and levels for the entire student community. They can at any given point in time understand daily trends, weekly trends. They can understand what is going on based on their gender, ethnicity, household status, sexual orientation. They can even go down to the levels of understanding who are the students who are at risk. And this is where AI comes in. because our system, machine learning algorithms, what they're doing is they're passing this information when students are expressing thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, and the dynamic list is pulled up. So counselors and administrators in schools can now look at this list. Out of, let's say 1,500 students in this school, they know that there are 21 students who are at risk, and they can literally go here, look at, why they are at risk. For example, it says, a student is expressing, I found that my grandmother has cancer and I got an F in history. So you clearly see that the forces of risk are personal life and academic life. So in nutshell, you can open this trusted space for your students and your community, and that community administration can see who is at risk, and they can take proactive interventions right away. And we've been able to help save lives just by introducing this platform in months in United States and in India.
So there are two things I wanted to pull out. Firstly, from the student point of view, I would think, putting myself back as a child quite a while ago, I'm not sure I would be willing to open up and share so many intimate thoughts of mine to a platform that could be accessed by anyone. So I wonder if you faced any issues just getting students to open up and just be really vulnerable.
Actually, it is quite the opposite. We did not realize as adults that how trapped students were feeling post-pandemic. Right when pandemic hit all of us globally, in about 3 months, almost 3 billion plus students or our youth were under lockdown. And now the entire social world was ripped apart from them. They were not able to access their world, and they were feeling suffocated. And that's why we have, high suicide rates, attempt to suicides, feeling anxiousness, depression, and more. And it's at an exponential rise as we speak. There is more willingness amongst the youth and students to share, but they are not able to share with their parents, their loved ones, or their counselors, because counselors are not even there, or some students or some youth do not have that equation or relationship where they open it up. So that's where this trusted space comes in. We were surprised how much students were sharing. And I can give you a quick reflection here where you can see all this information that is being flagged by the system is coming out of students. This is like all this. I'm feeling so annoyed right now with my family that I can't even say anything about it. Such data will never come out, but this data can mean a lot when people with influence can see, and you can see that there is no name associated with it, so there is confidentiality associated with all this, and the layers of security are associated, so that only the individuals who are authorized, for example counselors in a school, they will have the ability to see the names, and students already know that. Therefore, they know that when I'm sharing, I'm free to share, because only trustworthy individuals in my academic system will see it. Nobody else, not even my teachers, not even my parents. And that's why they open up so much, because they know that they have to find that space and let it go. Otherwise, the emotional baggage will not be diffused and they actually slip and snap.
Would you say it's very important to draw that line between the counselors and the teachers and the parents who have access to this kind of information?
Say that again one more time, Ling.
Would you say that it's very important to draw a line between who the counselors who have access to the information the students are sharing and the teachers and the parents who don't have access?
Well, they will have different levels of access. So parents can have summary reports. Then students can build their circles of trust, which means that they can identify, it could be a parent or a family member or a teacher or their coach or their friend even, who can be notified if they are close to the edge or at risk, and system can alert them. So student is deciding who is in their circle of trust, number one. So the power shifts in the hands of the student. Second, the consent is to be taken by the parents first before a minor or anyone under 18 logs into the system or gets access to the system. So parents understand that this is my child's space and we have to let him open up. And if my student is at risk, the school authorities will reach out to us. So that space and respect is mutual. Therefore, it's very simple. If I keep knocking on my son's door and stepping into my son's room, he will get annoyed and he'll close himself. But if I let him be free, he will come back to me and share more. And I think the same thought process and fundamental first principles apply here, because now you are giving that space to students. They share more, and they in fact include their teachers and their parents in their circles of trust, so that when they are at rest, they get notified automatically.
I mean, given the limited time, I thought we could wrap up by talking about something that's more practical. So for those listening, say I'm someone in the education field, what kind of practical takeaway would you have for them that they could implement in their work?
Sure. So I would say just introduce 2 minutes of quiet time before you start your class. As teachers, as educators, as administrators, it's not a big ask, I would say. Schools in the United States are doing it. Florida last week itself just signed this into a law that every public school teacher will start their class with a 2 minutes of quiet time. What we at Trust Circle have been talking about for almost 5+ years, now we are seeing that happening in reality, and at least Florida has taken that step. So just before you start your class, introduce 2 minutes of quiet time, and teachers can be the guiding light and a force behind it, because students follow when their teachers ask them to do so. So they are the engine of this, and they can really put the individuals on the right track in terms of connecting with themselves. So my only ask is, do this 2 minutes of self-reflection time in your schools, in your education systems. Things will change, and I hope that Ministry of Health, Ministry of Education listens to this. It's a simple bottoms up and top down model. If we do this, we can truly integrate social emotional learning into the education system and can foster, emotional resilience of our youth, who are our future. So hopefully we can do this in a methodical and a practical manner now, when it's needed the most.
I imagine a lot of people listening would also be parents. So do you have any advice for the parents who are listening to this and how they can foster greater emotional well-being?
Sure, absolutely. As a parent myself, we get paranoid, because uh, teenager, teenagers are, they're highly emotional, and they take their decisions. So it's natural for parents to be a little worried and anxious, but trust your loved ones. Give them space, let them fly, let them learn, let them come back to you. And if your education system and schools are introducing social emotional learning, support that, because I think this is one of the fundamental life skills which is missing from our education system, and therefore it's not in the roots and veins of our student community. It's very, very important as parents for us to support this movement, which is the social emotional learning movement. And I'm 100% sure that in next few years itself, SDG 3 and 4 will take a much stronger force, which is quality education and health and well-being. It is important for us as parents to just let our kids be themselves, give them that trusted space. And I'm very, very clear and confident that they will come back for your guidance, for your advice, and trust your education system, your teachers, your counselors, and administrators. If your student, your individual is at risk, they will let you know. And in fact, they need such tools so that they can get data.
Well, Sachin, clearly you are a fountain of knowledge and experience. For people listening who want to learn more about what you are doing, how they can get involved, how can they reach out to you?
I should be available anytime now. You can see, this is my life's calling. So anybody interested or have any questions, please reach out to me at S for Sam, A for Apple, C for Charlie, H for Honey, I for India, N for Nancy, which is SACHIN at trustcircle.co, TRUSTCIRCLE.co, just CO. And I should be accessible, or they can reach out to Ling, you or Kathleen anytime, and we can get in touch. But I'll be more than happy to connect and follow up if anyone has further questions or interest.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Sachin, for sharing your personal journey and insights into mental health and how Trust Circle is helping to transform the education space. Before we move on to the next panel session, I actually want to introduce Shafiq Bhatia. Born in Borneo, Shafiq is a speech coach, writer, and poet with championship titles in public speaking, debating, and rap battles. Here to inject a little fun to this YTL Foundation dialogue, please meet MC Stiff.
Hey, hello everyone. My name is Shafiq Bhatia, aka MC Stiff. Thanks for the introduction, Lingya. I'm also your friendly neighborhood MC and I'm a poet. So usually I write rhymes about my stories, but today I'm observing the talk and I'm going to write rhymes about what we've been learning today. So how do I begin? I'm going to give you a brief rap recap. When all the problems are all hidden, can I open these forbidden curtains? Sometimes serious issues are rising and we need to open these forbidden curtains. So I want to ask, can we handle this pandemic? Wait, is it can we? Because I think we can. But I think the load is heavy and we have a weak hand. So the question at hand is, do we want to? When 1 in 2 of students are nervous to sit for exams, that's 50%, even though they're over-prepared and they studied and they crammed. But like Francesca said, the parents are slammed. Jobs overturned, teachers overburdened, children at home, bored, facing screens, and they're expected to learn. They can't do that because everybody's speaking out of turn. Everyone's got their microphone on. Don't even make me turn, because we really need to be wise in this new generation. In desperation, when it comes to digitized preparation, we need to pause the logical in technologies and emphasize children's needs based, be more ecological, logically. Children need space to be creative and make mistakes. Enough global eyes. We need localized templates and teaching instructions. Sachin, I imagine that your vision gets a head scratching when people don't listen and they don't know what they're missing. I mean, we measure health vitals, but mental and emotional vitals? We have Trust Circle, and that is the battle end. I'm wondering if you're wondering, because there's music going on, this rhymes are still flowing. So I'm gonna tell you something. Really, I hate to perform what the world conforms to. I have to say I'm not at peace, far from iron out, I'm full of creases because COVID got us broken in pieces. There's a crowd in front of me now, and if you're wondering to me, what kind of speech is this? I guess I am trying to tell the teachers that some of the students all alone scared to reach us. Isn't it obvious? They're trying to walk through walls. We don't build them, we build bridges. We flush the happiness of all the trade of better grades, and we expect bigger riches. Expecting to sow them after we blow them. We don't know them, we sow them in stitches. And we complain about the drain and the pain, but we adults are the cause of the generation glitches. We have no idea what we are each drawing, and yet we're criticizing our children's pictures. I'm not trying to dig a ditch here. Please see and open your mind, observe my bigger picture. I want to see and serve towards a better future. Don't impose your ghosts here. I want to be so close to each other, so near. Different eyes see the same thing so clear. I propose courage over cowardice, no fear. I've had enough of going down south. Let's go north here. Time for some downtime. Hear me? Hear me? What about some online learning? Seriously, what are these kids even learning? Time is the essence and the times are still burning when the students' attention is waning and turning. No classmates at home with them close to class is boring. You wouldn't be happy studying alone, so you gotta empathize when your children's struggling at home. I don't even blame a student if they're gaming, distracted, online learning, sleeping or snoring. Students need to feel safe. Students need to be in a haven. Now the students all home alone in a cave. So of course discipline is acting up, misbehaving with all the innovation and tech. Children and adults are all under attack, all the commotion and all the hell scenes, cyberbullying affecting emotional well-beings. When did we dry the well that blinded us all from seeing that mental health is a form of fundamental wealth? When did we dry the well from all seeing that mental health is a form of fundamental wealth? When did we dry the well that blinded us all from seeing that fundamental wealth is mental health? And that's all from me, MC STI double F. Thank you. Yes, that's from me. I'll give you a wrap up of everything at the end of the program. But coming up next for today's dialogue is the Malaysian perspective for mental health and well-being for among school-going children. Leading this session is a friend of mine and also a program lead of Acumen Academy Malaysia. The beautiful, smart, amazing, ladies and gentlemen, let's give it up for Olga Chan.
Thank you so much, Shafiq. I was a little bit cheeky. I actually wanted him to say that little bit extra just to bring energy up. We have been on for more than an hour now. And thank you so much, Shafiq, for that very lighthearted performance. Hi, everyone. I am Olga. And I am very, very honored to be welcoming three amazing ladies to the stage with me. Shall we invite Rebecca, Pam, and also Madam Yong? Hi, Rebecca.
Hello.
Hi. And while waiting for Pam to come on. Hi. So we have heard perspective about what's going on with the pandemic right now, and also the tool that actually has been working on that can help teachers in the classroom. And in this conversation, Rebecca, Madam Yong, and as well as Pam, we will be focusing more on the Malaysian perspective. So Rebecca, I will start with welcoming you. Thank you for being here with us. Rebecca is from Dignity for Children, a foundation that runs a school for children from underprivileged backgrounds. She has 10 years experience as an educator and also a trained counselor. Madam Yong has been in the public school system for more than 30 years. She has recently retired, but her perspective is so essential for us as she has seen how things have been for the past 3 decades. But we're still waiting for Pam, but maybe let's just get started then.
Okay.
So what we want to achieve with this conversation is we're just having a coffee chat with each other. And we hope that our audience will be able to walk away with a general trend of the mental well-being of school-going children in the recent years, what are their challenges, coping mechanism, and also hopefully some tips that our audience can take away today. So let's start with the first question. So Madam Yong and Rebecca, can you share from your experience that you're seeing what are the recent trends on children's mental health?
The latest trend means what are the problems faced by the students nowadays?
That could be it, and also maybe it could also be positive trends, not just problems.
Well, now the students because they have anxiety most of the times, especially with pandemic. They have stress. They find that they cannot cope with the academic. Sometimes they find that examination pressure. They worry they can't score enough A's to secure the scholarship, or they find that it's difficult for them to answer the question set by the examination board. So they have all the fears, anxiety, the stress. So at the same time, they face a modern technology work where they have to balance themselves. They find themselves, they tend to compare themselves in Instagram with their peers. Some of them find that they're inadequate. They are not as good as their friends. So they find that it's a pressure. At the same time, nowadays the children online, too much time online. So until they don't have time to go out to the field to have a basketball games or badminton games, the human social relationship is, I consider, deteriorate now. And then they also facing the problem of cyberbullying nowadays, especially secondary students. Sometimes they say a simple words. I mean, they don't mean to hurt other friends, but they will get the bully, the so-called common bully from the friends. At the same time, they find I find that the children now they can't communicate well with their parents as well as friends. Maybe due to communication skills, they lack of communication skills and so forth.
Thank you, Madam Yong. So what I'm hearing is that you have been comparing from the past 10 years how children have evolved in terms of their mental health and what's different now versus in the past. In the past, maybe children were able to connect with people better. They had more time to play basketball, connect through non-digital means. But today, children have got competing priorities between being on the digital platform versus being physical. And at the same time, the academic pressures are still there. Thank you so much, Madam Yong. Rebecca, would you like to share a little bit more from what you see?
Sure. So many people say that, Generation Z, which is like 6 to 24 years old, is probably the most least resilient generation. And according to the APA, which is the American Psychological Association, Generation Z most probably will report either a poor or a fair status when you ask them on their mental health, like how's your mental health? How would you rate your mental health? But I would say that what they are facing nowadays, hello, Pam, welcome. I would say the current generation also faces many stresses. You see that suicide ideation, suicide attempt is on the rise. You see self-harm is on the rise. And also with all this social media of TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, there's also this daring competition going on. And some of them have led to death. But that pressure of not just living up to the expectation of parents, school, society, friends, and peers, there's also real issues of increased, I would say, sexual harassment, worry about financial stability. And of course, I think what Shafiq mentioned in his rap as well, cyberbullying is major. I can tell you stories after stories of the students that I see in our school and how we try to advocate and bring awareness on how do you protect yourself, how do you use online platforms in a more healthy manner. So definitely when you ask about the trend, I think there's a decline in or deterioration in their mental health. But I think the positive part is also Generation Z being, I think they're the most adventurous generation in that sense. They are probably the generation that is most willing to try out new things. If you say, okay, we have a new flavor of bubble gum or food, and other generation would be like, oh, what's that? They would be like, yeah, sure. So there's, perhaps we could, tune into that. How do we use that, the adventurous side, and how do we use that to teach them how to be more resilient when they face challenges in life? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca, for adding the positive side of the current generation, their willingness to experiment, the eagerness, in fact. And actually, it's great timing that Pam is here. Pam is a psychologist who runs a social impact organization that believes in building a world where everybody feels needed valued and also connected. And in fact, the organization is called Humankind. And last year, Humankind started the first child helpline for psychosocial support in response to the pandemic. Pam, would you like to share with us any trends that you have observed, or maybe respond to some of the issues that Rebecca and Madam Yong have shared? Cyberbullying, peer comparison, competition with digital platforms, or the likes.
Yeah, thank you, Olga, and it's really nice to be here. One of the things that I've noticed with the Buddy Bear helpline is that children and teenagers are far more aware of their mental health issues. And that has been something that is very gratifying, because for a lot of us, we've been trying to advocate, or we've been trying to educate in terms of mental health issues and the importance of mental health. But when we started the Buddy Bear helpline, we were really wondering whether children would utilize it, and would they even recognize the fact that they were struggling. And one of the things that we really like is that, usually I think Madam Yong and Rebecca will tell you, sometimes children, the way we see children is they're actually brought into our office by angry parents or frustrated teachers, and then we're having to work with a very reluctant child. But with the Buddy Bear helpline, what we realize is that the children are actually asking for help on their own. They're advocating for themselves. They're saying, hey, I have a mental health problem. Hey, I'm struggling in this way. I don't feel good about myself. I don't feel good about what's happening. And I think that's a really nice trend, that we're beginning to see that children are feeling empowered. They're having the agency to actually reach out and ask for help. Another thing that's been really surprising is they actually know, and they're actually able to say, I have depression. It was quite shocking, when the first time I heard like a 9-year-old say to me, I have depression. I think I have depression, And then they, when we ask them, why do you think like this? What makes you say that you have this? And they start to describe some of the feelings that they're having. And we realize that actually the children of today actually are far more educated and far more aware. Maybe their access to the computer, their access to the internet, their ability, like Rebecca said, to actually explore, experiment, to find out about things and strategies and recognizing that, hey, it's not just I have this, but I want to do something about it. I can do something about it, and asking and reaching out for help. I think that's a really nice and wonderful trend that we're seeing. And I think anything that we can do as parents, caregivers, and teachers to encourage that, I think that would be really, really wonderful, that you actually beginning to see that, not just the recognition of it, but actually reaching out for help-seeking behavior as tremendously powerful and very encouraging. Mm-hmm.
That is amazing. Madam Young, maybe would you like to add a little bit more about what Pam has shared?
Oh, sorry, I can't hear you, Olga.
Oh, no worries. So Pam has just shared a little bit more about the agency or the access of information that allows students to feel more self-empowered and aware of what is happening within them. Do you think this is a difference between what happened 30 years ago and today?
Oh, totally different. 30 years ago, students don't have access to the internet, and they hardly got a chance to go into the internet. So the only media they can get is through newspaper or through simple from the books or what, from mouth to mouth. So at that time, whenever they need resources, they will go to the library or everything. So at that time, the lack of information, but they are more to human. They tend to get resources from the teachers, that time don't have counselor. That time only have guidance teacher. So they just approach the teacher, whoever they think will give them the true information. So whereas compared with now, they have so many resources, and they themselves also finding difficult to understand which one is true. As just now I mentioned cyberbullying, and then sometimes they just mention a simple sentence or comment on the Instagram or TikTok or everything. They get tons of comments which they were never able to accept it.
Thank you, Madam Yong. And this brings me to something that an ex-colleague has said before. The current generation is also known as the strawberry generation, where they are more self-aware, more sensitive. Maybe our panel can give some comments. Is that true? Is that a myth? Maybe, or even if it's a half truth, you just share more with us.
Maybe I'll, yeah, go ahead. Sorry, Madam Yong.
Sorry, Madam Yong, you're a little bit soft. Could you put your mic by your mouth?
I do agree that when students not appreciate, so they need to have strong support.
Sorry, Madam Yong, it's still pretty soft. You have a mic on your right side. Just put it by your mouth.
Okay.
Yeah, on your right hand.
Great now?
Better. Put it closer.
Okay, can you hear it now?
Very good. Thank you.
I do agree the present generation's students are more fragile and more sensitive. So, but again, if they really, I use the word, if they really face a problem and they can reach to a certain people they trust, I think it can be helped. For example, the school council or the school teachers they think can trust. So all these problems can be solved easily. Of course, parents, we need support from parents. Okay.
Thank you, Madam Yo. So the term is maybe it seems like students today feel like they're more fragile, but actually they have more access to resources. And if they have that, they are hopefully okay. Rebecca and Pam, do you have any response to that?
Yeah, I just would want to say something in regards to that. I think there are two ways of looking at this. Number one is maybe the current generation are more willing to speak up. And it's more acceptable maybe in the past where the whole idea that children are meant to be seen and not heard was very strong, where else that is a change, that's a perspective that is now changing as more and more educators are recognizing that self-esteem, giving children the opportunity to speak up, giving space for that to happen. So, we're hearing more opportunities to hear their voices and hear their perspectives. So I think maybe that's part of it. The other thing also to think about is in terms of protective factors, what are some of the things that protect children's mental health? So, when we look at the protective factors, we know that relationship with parents is good. A good relationship with parents or caregivers is a protective factor. We know that having good friends at school is another protective factor. We know the ability to be able to make choices and determine things for themselves is another protective factor. And when we look at how does that play out in today's generation, where both parents are working, so whether even if you're working from home or you're at the workplace, you're both parent caregivers are working, and with especially if you live in the city, or even if you come from low income communities where parents are often have to work really hard and long hours, the ability to have a parent who's there and who's connected to you is no longer there. Maybe some of us grew up with homes where our mom wasn't working. We had a stay-at-home mom. That's very different. And so usually if you see a deterioration in those protective factors, and what we've been seeing even in the recent mental health survey, we know that a majority of children are saying, I don't think my parents even know about what my homework is. A lot of children are saying, I don't even have a close friend at school. So when you see a deterioration of these protective factors, then obviously you're going to also see children, what you're saying is more fragile. It's because they don't have the things that would normally keep them safe or keep them buffered from the difficulties of life.
Thank you so much, Pam, for explaining to us those deterioration protective factors. Rebecca, I'm very sure you have more to add from your experience working at Dignity for Foundation, Dignity for Children.
I think talking about the strawberry, I think I'm also guilty of using it at times, especially when dealing with youth that seems to be like They will come to you and they're like, teacher, I just want to die now because my mom scolded me. But I think it is very important for us to be an adult, because it's very difficult for teenagers, number one, to speak to an adult. As a teenager or as a child, adults can be quite scary because they will feel judged. So I think it's very important as teachers, as parents, as mental health workers, to take the stance that even if our child comes to us and say, I want to, I didn't get a good mark, I want to die, it's a very real issue. So instead of focusing that, they're just not resilient like, my generation and my generation before me, I think it's very important to be understanding, because that would help them to be more resilient in the future, instead of dismissing them. This is just the problem of your generation. You just need to get over it and toughen up. Because most of the time, after journeying with them, explaining to them, chances are they would want to be better. They would want to, okay, teacher, I will try out this, what you said. And I think it's very important to understand that this current generation, rather the Generation Z, is also a generation that has a lot of potential. They are very excited about things. Actually very excited about many things. So I think sometimes it's just helping them to see that, hey, there is an alternative to this way of thinking. There's a better way to handle this. Most of the time, they are very, very open to receiving the input, especially once there's trust. Yeah.
I really appreciate that you spoke about understanding, empathy. It is an age where it is more and more needed today. And I'm not proud of using the term strawberry generation, actually. But I think it's important for us to talk about it so that we can understand what it really means. And it actually causes a lot of discomfort among the current generation when that term is used. But dialogue allows us to understand more. And this is really great. And I would really love to learn more about what are different tips and tricks for our audience, who range from parents to anybody who have young children around them, who can help to support the mental health of our current school-going generation.
I can go first. I would say it's really tough with all the stresses that everybody already has, and you top it up. It's like a cherry on a cake. The pandemic, it just gets really tough. I think acknowledging that is a big step. Right, we talk about whether it's AA or any form of addiction, acknowledging is very important. So I think when a child comes to you or you see something amiss, sometimes in online class, I know it's very easy to turn off the camera. So our teachers, what we do is we will encourage them, okay, please turn on your camera. And if they don't, we will try to understand and find out later. Oh, so and so, can I know what's the reason that, because we want to be sensitive as well. So I would say definitely number one, keep the line of communication open. Like I mentioned earlier, sometimes it's quite scary to go to an adult as a child or a teenager because you feel very judged. So I think keeping that communication, and you might, as a parent, as a teacher, you might have to repeat it many times. By the way, if there's anything, I'm here. By the way, if there's any challenges that you want to share, you can come and talk to me. We might have to repeat that multiple times before they would be like, oh yeah, I remember that teacher or my adult or my mom or my dad said that to me. So we must always keep that dialogue open. And I think it's not just like you must talk to me. We can encourage them to say, you don't have to come and talk to me, but I would encourage you to talk to someone that you trust, preferably an adult, so that they can guide you. Because peers, normally they would probably agree and validate what you feel. So most of the time, the teachers and what we tell the parents is that encourage your child to talk. And it doesn't have to be you. It can just be a trusted adult, whether it's a counselor at school, whether it's a teacher. And each of the teacher, we do the same thing. Like, I'm here for you, but if you want to talk, you don't have to come and talk to me. You can talk to any of the other teachers or your parents if you feel more comfortable. Yeah, that's what I think. Yeah.
Thank
For
you.
me, as a counselor, I always practice open door prayer policy. Open door policies means the student can come in, can walk in anytime. There's no such thing that time limit. I even offer my WhatsApp, my Yahoo, my email. They can email me anytime. So there's irregardless of time. So we must always remember their words. Sometimes it's so simple. They say, "Oh, I'm not happy today." Well, we have to ask them why they're not happy. Or they say, "I died at this time. My exam is not good. My mother will sure beat me out." We shouldn't. We say, "I am nothing." We shouldn't say like that. We have to say, why? We have to sit down and listen to them. Always make them feel that you are available anytime, any place. Sometimes I sit at the canteen, the student just walk to me, "Teacher, you see, today what my mother prepared for me, just a sandwiches. What do you think?" So you let them talk lah. Then you just listen. Then when you are free, you just call them in and talk to them, listen to them. Then ask them what they want, what they expect the parent prepare for them. Then slowly open up, build a trust on them. Sometimes a counselor alone in school is not enough. We can encourage other teachers to, to be their trust person. For me, my school, I retrain a few teachers. They are willing to open to the student. They're willing to accept the student anytime, any place. So that's why to me, open door policy is very important. Start from the principal to the school gardener. As long as somebody listen to them, I think the problem will be solved. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Yong. I think my takeaway from you also is it's not just open door policy, it's also listening to the music beneath the words. They can say one simple word, but it might mean a lot. And we want to be able to see it by being present. Pam, I'm now looking at you.
I'm just thinking, I wish I had Madam Yong as my school counselor when I was in school. She sounds amazing. But I just want to, it's absolutely right. Just assuring your child that you are available. So whether you're a teacher or a parent, sometimes we assume that because we're a teacher or parent, they would know to come to us. But just verbalizing that and saying, I'm here for you, will listen to you, is very, very encouraging to a child. It's that openness, that non-judgmental way of listening, which is very hard because as parents and teachers, we often want to give advice. We often very quick to know what is the right thing to do, but actually giving them that space to express themselves, to share their point of view, and then responding with that sense of curiosity of, tell me more, help me understand what you're going through. Can you say more about what is happening? So that taking that sense of, I want to learn about you, and then validating that your child's experience. One of the sad things that we often hear is, when we ask the kids, have you spoken to anybody? Oh, I told my parent, but she doesn't believe me. I told my parent, but she says I'm just talking nonsense. So it's aside from just giving that space for the child to speak, but validating that I can see this is very hard for you. I can see you're really struggling with that. I can see this is you really don't feel good about this. So, and it makes sense that you would feel this way. Life, it is very hard what you're going through right now, and taking it that from that point of view. I think these are like Madam Yong says, if you're able to do these things, these are very powerful things that you can do to actually to help a child to help them, deal with whatever challenges they're having. I see Madam Yong wants to say something.
I always believe even small change can go a long way in helping somebody feel better. I mean, we as a counselor, sometimes we just do a small thing. There is a great change on the child. A simple word, for example, encouragement. You say, "Well done. I think you are good today. I think you can do better." simple word, or just give them say a pat on their shoulder, I think will do better than anything. That's why in my counseling room, I would always encourage my children, throw the pillow on the floor, sleep on the floor, talk to me. I don't expect them to sit on the chair and talk to me. I expect them to be relaxed, comfortable. And then sometimes they say, teacher, can I hug you? Just let them hug you. Or teacher, can I just sit with the leg kang, the leg open? I said, go ahead if you feel comfortable. I said, but outside the counseling room, please don't do that. Let them feel comfortable. Let them feel they can open up to you. Then everything is soft.
Thank you so much, Madam Yong. I think I really appreciate learning from this conversation myself, which is to continue to keep that line of communication open and to see this current generation as the generation full of excitement, agency, access to resources, very self-aware, and maybe that's a lot of opportunity for us as adults to ride on that to help them achieve their full potential. And with that, thank you so much, our lovely panel, Pam, Madam Yong, and also Rebecca for joining us. You may stay on stage. I am going to invite, I think, Kathleen back up on stage for a Q&A. I can see there are many, many questions for you, so brace yourself.
Hello, everyone. I think we're going to wait for Professor Julie Allen, Dr. Francesca, and Bethan. And I have great news that Sachin has felt so invigorated after this session and listening to all of you that he's joining us as well. Welcome back, everyone. So I think this subject has been so important and we have learned so much. And so our audience obviously have been left with some questions because, you know, we haven't had really much time to explore some of the subjects that have been brought up. So first off, let me just quickly get into it so that we can get through as many questions as possible. So there's a question here for Bethan that you mentioned about mental wellness being a content in the school curriculum. Any visualizations of what we are hoping that would look like? We can't hear you, Bethan.
Sorry, no, I'll unmute myself. It's a great question. I think personally the way I visualize it was I think we have kind of an emphasis on physical well-being in the curriculum, in that there is a certain amount of time dedicated each week to kind of physical activities and like sports and things like that. And I think it would be nice to see a similar kind of thing for mental well-being, to take some time, whether that's to learn more about, mental health practices, like, how important things like maybe like meditation or yoga or things like that, and like practicing kind of like mindfulness to be more self-aware, as we've kind of discussed in this dialogue. But also kind of, I think, using the programs like Sachin was talking about, and embedding them into kind of like school practice and ethos, and then having like a regular time during the week that maybe there are scheduled times for students to meet with mental health counselors and have one-on-one discussions, or maybe even promote group discussions in like block times in the curriculum, so that there is kind of like an openness and an attitude that promotes discussion and inclusion around any kind of mental well-being and mental well-being challenges. So
Yeah, thank you very much, Beth. And that leads us well into the next question, which is, what could be some of the challenges that we can foresee in implementing this mental wellness curriculum in Malaysia or in general? So perhaps I should call on our Malaysian educators in this panel to first of all maybe look at the Malaysian context and what challenges we would face. Would anyone like to jump in, either Rebecca, Madam Yong?
Please go ahead. Please go ahead.
Pam, go ahead.
I think to me, mental health in general in Malaysia is something that is still very, I would say, at the infant state. But it's not one without hope. I think even specific things such as social emotional learning curriculum, which is something that we also started to formalize in our curriculum at our school this year. It's probably going to sound less scary for Malaysian parents. Oh, my child has to go for a mental health class. That would probably be like, what's wrong with my child? My child is not crazy. I think if we can package it and say, okay, your child is going to learn how to manage their feelings, how to express their feelings, how to manage conflict, being aware of how to relate to another person that might be from a different background. I think that sounds really, really good. And I think as parents and as teachers, they will probably buy into the idea a lot better. So I think the packaging is very important if you want to promote it in the Malaysian school context.
Thank you, Rebecca. Madam Yong, do you have any comments on that?
Okay, for me, I find that we have to make mental health known to the public, to the teachers, to the parents. For example, we have to organize a wellness week to involve parents. We can get speakers come into the school and talks, involving parents and students as well as teachers. So we can have encourage more social activity, social time. For example, sport days. Encourage parents to take part also. So co-curriculum activity, encourage every student take part on co-curriculum activities so that they can involve themselves, they can speak out, and then they find that themselves are useful in a certain way. Okay, that's for my part.
Thank you, Madam Yong. Okay, the next question is from Anne Kaur, who is an education advisor from Leap Ed Services. She says, very insightful points highlighted. It would be interesting to know how resetting can be implemented. I think this question is quite a general question that we can look at from different perspectives. So perhaps, Julie, I can invite you to start off with that question.
Thank you. I think it would be a good thing to start with research and to pull back and really try to find out from the people most closely involved what went well during the pandemic and what didn't go so well, and to allow people to start to reimagine what education might look like with this reset. I would especially want to hear from the children and young people here, because in much of my research, which has involved children and young people, they're very clear about what is good and what is bad for them in terms of learning and relationships within education. But I think the other stakeholders have much to tell us about what to do. And we might imagine research methods that really unleash people's creativity and imagining so that they don't just default to the same things again. So I would start with research.
Sachin, do you have a view on this?
Sure. I think the first fundamental change in my mind to reset is, as parents, or as caregivers or as loved ones, we need to be open-minded, and we need to support the schools and the teachers and administrators to give them that freedom to experiment and innovate as we oscillate back and forth from hybrid learning environment to remote learning environment, or maybe full-fledged back to school learning environment. There are a lot of concerns that parents now have because mental health has become a dining table topic, which was not the case. So rare benefit or rare positive outcome of COVID is that we are open to, as parents, as society, open to embrace the concept of mental health is important. And schools and administrators in the school districts have the opportunity to capitalize on that. In fact, in the United States, public schools are stressed with shortage of funds because budget cuts are happening. But how Trust Circle is able to get into the public schools is because parents are more willing to donate to introduce social emotional learning into the education curriculum. So I'm just giving an example that there is intrinsic motivation, and which is very, very common across the globe, and it is more in the developing countries because the impact and the resources are much, much lower. So we need to harness the potential of parents and caregivers willing to step forward, and the administration can capitalize on that and introduce SEL into the education system. And that could be simply 2 minutes of self-reflection time, or introducing tools, or introducing emotional well-being assessments, just like physical assessments, or sports, or mindfulness, whatever it is. Just introduce well-being into the daily routine. I think that itself is a big shift that is going to happen, which will save lives in my mind. So that's the foundation. We have on the parent side, we have more willingness now, and on the administration side, and the educator side, and the uh, implementer side, we should just connect the dots now. This is the time when we can harness this potential of being very, very open to mental health from parents' perspective.
Yeah, that's a great insight. I think we tend to see it as a divide, parents and the school, and that the interests are not aligned. And the pandemic has brought us closer. Parents
Yes.
now have a desire to make sure that the mental well-being of their children are taken care of in school, and school has that opportunity to work with the parents.
Yeah.
I think, for the educators out there, just hope you will take this home, and that, you can really implement something meaningful in your schools. And so we move on to the next question. There are quite a few, so we just have to go through them as quickly as we can, so that everyone has an opportunity to have their questions answered. So the next one is, it's challenging when many of us are still in the phase of adaptation to this pandemic. Would you mind sharing what is the best way to cope with this situation in a way to retain good mental health and physical health? It's quite a general question, so I will just throw it to the floor. Does anyone want to jump in for this question? The best way to cope with the situation in a way that will retain good mental and physical health.
I can step forward. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Dr. Francis. Go ahead. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Well, first thing that comes to my mind, it's schools related. So we saw how schools that were already well connected and well trusted communities of practices, they manage better both mental and physical well-being of students, parents, and teachers. So my answer to this would be focusing on organizational management of school communities. That is very important because although mental and physical health has a focus on the individual, we are not isolated. And when we are in a school system that shares the burden of a pandemic, or shares the stress of teaching of being parents and being preoccupied for children, or being children that have to undergo stressful assessments. That is where to start. So to focus on how integrated school systems can actually share the burden of this.
Sachin.
Yeah, sure. I'll share what has worked with me, with my son, and personally. The screen time has increased exponentially. It has increased 3 times at the least. If we really, take minutes into the account. So what I've done and introduced as change in my personal life is I've actually started switching off my phone or notifications and putting the phone away, and being with my loved ones. When I'm with my loved ones, I try to be as far away as possible from the devices, because they are the source of distraction. And what we don't realize is the more distracted we are, the more unsatisfied we are getting, because we are not able to focus on what is important to us. And these tools are important for us now. We can't live without them, but at the same time, we need to know how to disconnect from them. And that's an art. That's a very, very fine art. And the more you practice to be away from your phone and not being always, with them, with these devices, it will certainly help you get back into your inner connectedness and better physical and mental well-being. It's just a practical way. Seems like I'm more satisfied when I'm not checking my phone all the time, than carrying it with me.
Yeah, that's great advice. I think it's something that we all need to learn to do. And
It's
okay,
hard.
next question. Yeah, it's hard. It's hard. It's an aspiration of mine. The next question is, online learning can be extremely impersonal and void of emotional social affirmation and connection between teacher and students. How do you help students and parents who are mentally stressed because they are unable to focus on the online lessons due to attention deficit disorder and difficulty adjusting to the new unfamiliar learning environment? I think, Pam, maybe you would comment on this.
So I'm just looking at the question a bit more carefully now. So in terms of online learning, that has been one of the key stressors for a lot of children and parents, because this is something really unusual for most people, where with the traditional idea of being actually in a physical class with a teacher present, that has been the mode for so many years, and to make this shift into this online situation is very, very challenging. One of the strategies that a lot of parents or children use is actually limiting the class times. So, parents actually talking to the teachers and the educators in terms of what would be ideal kind of times and activities for their child, especially when you have a child with a learning disability. And that's where you really need the parent to advocate, because children on their own sometimes don't have the ability to advocate or may not be taken very seriously. But when a parent or caregiver actually advocates on behalf of the child and notices what the child responds to positively and notices what the child needs in order to be supported in the online learning environment, not only does the child benefit, but the teacher or the educator also benefits, because most teachers and educators, they want to do right, they want to do well with the child also. They want to see that child succeed. So this information sharing between the parent and the educator, it is very critical in ensuring a positive outcome for online learning with children.
Yeah. It's a partnership between the teacher and the parent. And I think, Francesca, you mentioned that in your interviews of the school in Malaysia, you found that was happening, that was this relationship between parents and teachers. Okay, so next question. Thank you so much, Pam, for that. The next question is to Madam Yong, and it is, hello, Madam Yong. Do you not agree that children cannot communicate with parents? That is not a problem now, but has been a problem for many generations due to the generation gap. And this question comes from Dato Sumin.
Yes, I do agree. Generation gap. There are many children, they can't communicate with their parents. Never mind. They can talk to the school counselor. Why worry? I mean, during my generations, we are scared to talk to our parents too. But we have good teachers in school. So we talk to our teacher. Nowadays, you got school counselor. Every school there is a counselor. So go and talk to the school counselor. Encourage your children, talk to the counselor if they can't talk to you, or the school teacher that they trust.
Okay,
Am I answering the question?
Yes, thank you so much. So it is actually, we're out of time, but I hope you don't mind, I'll let this go on. There are two more questions and we'll just try to get through them. This next one is from Daniel, who asks, have there been instances where emotional stress from online learning during MCO, for Sachin and our friends from Birmingham, MCO is our lockdown. So have there been instances where emotional stress from online learning during lockdown translates to anxiety or panic attacks? So I think it's just from your experiences, whether you know that, whether this has happened. Rebecca, you deal with a school of 2,000 children.
I was going to comment as well. Thank you, Kathleen. I think, yes, unfortunately, I wish I could say no, but unfortunately, yes. I had a student who texted and said, teacher, I have breakdown. She used the word nervous breakdown. I don't know what to do. I can't go on with class. I just don't know what to do. Another student shared, teacher, I just woke up in the middle of the night and I don't know whether it's normal or not normal. I just woke up in the middle of the night, just thinking about my homework. I'm just thinking about exam. I'm just woke up. Is this normal or not? So unfortunately, it's happening. People are getting, and I think it's not only students,
Teachers too.
teachers as well. It's just that as adults, we learn to cope better, I think, or we learn different mechanisms to help us manage better. But for children, it's extremely difficult. They might not have the words to even verbalize what they are feeling. So it's probably like comes out in a way of anxiety, depression, and attack. So it is happening.
Yeah, so it's important that there's this line of communication between the teacher and the students, right? I think, for me, it would be, if that student didn't have that outlet to tell someone else about her problem or his problem, that would be, kind of a disaster brewing. Okay, on to the next question, which is really quite related, which it says, unfortunately, most teachers in public schools are not able or willing to spend time to listen to their students or are dismissive. Worse is that when students are having emotional episodes or breakdowns, they are classified as troublemakers. My question is, how can this situation be improved? Public school teacher or counselor, Madam Yong, would you like to take this question?
I find that it's not really true. And maybe I'm come from a school, I'm very caring. Most of the teachers in the school are very caring. They are willing to spend time if the child really, really walk through. If really they cannot get the teacher listen to them, they can just walk into the principal room or any senior staff. For example, assistant, senior assistant. If they cannot get the counselor, just walk to anybody, talk to them. In like my school, we do have peer group counselor. I mean peer. They can talk to the peer, and the peer can refer it to the teachers that they think they can be trusted. I think all this, I do agree there are some public school teachers are not willing to spend time to listen to their students. But I find that most of the teachers, they will if the student really step in and talk to them.
Okay, thank you so much, Madam Yong. I think we need to call that a wrap for the day. I know there are a few more questions, but we have run over our time, and we have to be quite respectful for people's times, right? So, yes, Sachin, thank you so much again. So, once again, thank you all for spending your morning, afternoon, early hours of the morning with us today on this really important subject. I hope our audience will be able to take away, much of what you have said, and at least you will have, started a thinking process, started an evaluation, and what reset means. So to all our speakers and panel members, thank you so much for joining us today. And please stay, because we have Shafiq coming back next on, who will do his final summary. And I'm sure it's going to be brilliant, as was his earlier piece. So Shafiq, I'm handing over back to you again.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. It's been a real honor to be among such decorated panelists and such wise individuals who have been on the ground as well as dive deep into the data. I really appreciate the content that was given to me to be summarized in my wrap up, which is something I'm about to do. Okay, that's how we're going to do this. Hope y'all can feel that. Let's go. Jip, most rappers want to start beef. This rapper wants to end grief. I'm not here looking for no promotion. I'm here to help understand these emotions. Most rappers want to start beef. This rapper wants to end grief. I am not here looking for no promotion. I'm here to help understand these emotions. We have to talk about taboo. We have to talk about taboo. What do we see if we open our eyes? What do we see if I part through the skies? Suicide attempts on the rise. Self-harm is really on the rise. Peer pressure and my fear measures. We need to recalculate and remeasure. We need to bond. We need to realize that we are torn. Because I was born in a world with no internet. These kids were born in a world, they are internet. Generation X, Y, or Z. Do we speak text or send emojis? If we live in the same society, shouldn't we be calling it generation we? W-E. It's between you and me. Stop calling your children strawberries. I'm serious. Our life burdens are seriously, differently heavy. Tell them you can talk to me. If not me, child, please talk to somebody. Go and score more victories. Madam Young, I'm a fan of your open door policies. Madam Young, you're a star. You fill me with hope. And even Bruno Mars said, leave the door open. There are some different kinds of definition of discrimination and poverty. Some of us are killed to ill will lotteries. Not everybody gets the grand prize. That's how we miss the disenfranchised, because the whole nation on lockdown. We need a combination of top down. That's right, on the ground. Concerned with these efforts, then all parties can have a concerted effort. That's really what I call true effort, because I second what Bethan has mentioned. We need to view success in different dimensions. There shouldn't be a label. Like, I don't care, you shouldn't call your students a 10 or a 7. Let's have more flexible judgment. Let's spare their religious views in the hell or heaven. Screen time has far from decline. Count the minutes. Sachin says it's increased by 3 times. Yeah, we have to adjust our trust in these times, and I hope that I've done just in these rhymes. How do we navigate these pearly gates? We have to advocate at early ages. That's right. Be willing to read, be willing to learn, be willing to turn, be willing to research. Not just scroll the pages, read between the lines. We need to breathe first and be less ageist. So thank you for sharing, all the panelists. Julie Allen, truly talented. back in chorus with Beth and Morris. Never slacking, every day she packing for us. Dr. Francesca, you know the best, you know who she be. Studying ableism, inclusivity. We talked about many things, equity. Yes, let's not forget equal opportunity. Session, thank you for staying on. I gotta mention, is it midnight there or dawn? We got Rebecca Lynn, born in City at 1. Now she the one managing and battling. Let me shift the camera to Pamela, or should I say Pam? I love how you do things. That's a grand slam. I hope you all forever stay wrong. I love it. You're never wrong. Listen to Madam Young and these points I brought up. Getting into this action. I don't want to get caught up with disappointing distractions. I'm here to inspire this cause and steer the important dire discourse for the race to make it happen with dedicated actions based on our designated passion. And that is what I'm asking, elevating passion. I'm basking in this task, my mission of unmasking the sad and the mad that we had when we were feeling bad. But if we take it and break it and make it a reason to take all the hatred and turn that to reasons, maybe we can find the right reason to stop living in our own mental prisons, impersonating other persons when we're feeling uncertain. Then I'm feeling really, really certain. Because here's the truth. I hope that the truth burns. And here's my truth. I hope that my truth earns that every citizen opens the forbidden curtains from all the truth that is hidden. Then only then can we see a beautiful ending to a beautiful new beginning. And that's the message I am sending. I want to thank YTL Foundation. Yeah, thank you YTL Foundation, Datin Kathleen, the organizing team, Alex Francis. There are plenty more of you that I cannot think at the top of my mind now because I'm overwhelmed with the content that I receive. That was exactly a 5-minute freestyle, which I managed to include my prompts and triggers. So I hope that we take all the things we learn here and make this mission bigger, right? Don't let it linger. Pull the trigger. Call it out. Talk to your children. Ask them what's wrong. It's okay. It's okay. Nobody knows how to talk to their children. Just because we made them doesn't know we know how they're functioning. So I think it's important for us to breathe and really, really understand that it's a big fight for all of us. It's generation we, not X, Y, or Z. Alpha is coming up. Let's deal with that later, yeah? Thank you, everyone. I'd like to pass this back to Datin Kathleen. Thank you again for having me. Follow me on my Facebook page. You can hang out. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Shafiq. That was brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. Really enjoyed that. So everyone, thank you for staying with us this afternoon. We've come to the end of the session, and I think we take away some key words. I mean, for me, it's been reset, thinking of what we've done well, thinking of what we haven't done well. You know, 2 minutes of quiet time every day in school to cater for our social, emotional health. Technology that should be caring and convivial. And finally, I think at the base of it all, building trust and building community. So thank you all for staying with us, and we look forward to having you back next year for our next dialogue series. Goodbye.